talking
I
about
just
we
don't.
were
Wait,
primarily talking religious and
wait.
religion.
Come back to me. Come back to me. You don't get to do this thing of like, you know what? I just don't feel that red and blue are that significant, so I don't want to call them colors
Well,
anymore.
we were just
This is not
talking
how it
about
works.
religion. Religion seems a little bit more significant than us creating some dick sucking or whatever balls metaphors he was using at the time to come up
That's
with
perfectly
metaphorical
fine,
truth.
but the point is that the
That's what
way
I
that
said.
you
I
want to
said, yeah,
use the
sure, that
word
might be metaphorical
archetype,
truth, but I don't think it's that significant as like
sure, but the
the
way that you're
metaphorical
wanting to use
truths
the
we
word
see scattered
archetype,
throughout the
JonJon,
religions.
JonJon, I know you like talking and not listening to other people when they engage with you, but the way that you want to use the word archetype, it's not just one that you can just go pick and choose and use it as you want to and abuse it.
Why not?
Because it then doesn't follow when you're trying to have a conversation with someone like you were trying to have with Ninja. It fucks it
That's a
up.
dogmatic statement.
Yeah, go ahead and start picking words and using them to make yourself
That's
sound intelligent.
dogmatic.
It doesn't
Is that
work for
not
you.
dogmatic what you're
No,
saying right now?
that's no, that's just
Stop doing
reasoning.
that.
That's just reasoning, John.
No, man. Reasoning itself can be dogmatic. Oh, fuck.
You should use
Not like
simple
this.
words. It will do you good.
My IQ's too high. And by too high, I mean I'm stoned.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, it's worthless talking to you because you just come in here high as fuck and you babble nonsense.
Brenda, you're extremely dogmatic. You're like, what are you, like a scientific, like a materialist, reductionist, Richard Dawkins type? What's going on here?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Like, okay, so you're basically just like a materialist or physicalist. That's probably how you
Yeah,
would
sure.
describe
Yeah,
yourself,
sure.
right?
Are you a spiritualist?
I don't know what the fuck that is.
I would imagine.
I'm very humble.
I would imagine that spiritualist is the opposite of what a physicalist is. You believe that there's a spiritual dimension in addition to the material world, right?
Well, I think that there is this inner dimension within the universe that is conscious experience. And I think that under your framework, unfortunately, I feel very bad for you guys.
What's an
Even though I
inner?
respect your physicalism so much.
You don't
But
respect
like consciousness
anybody.
can't be accounted for by physicalism.
Sure
The
can.
hard problem is a thing.
No, it's
You
not.
probably disagree with that.
Yeah.
Exactly. You probably
Right.
heavily influenced by Dan Dennett, maybe, I don't know. But
Among others.
Assuming this is a problem is not justified.
so I'm not convinced. I have this intuition, and nothing you guys have said to me has convinced me otherwise.
Well, that's just
And it's an intuition
dogmatism. That's just
no matter
dogmatism.
how much information you guys have, no matter how much mathematics you can get, how many things you can measure, you can't write something down, and that helps, like, explains what it's like to feel what I'm feeling when I'm tray flipping down some stairs
We don't
or something like that.
know that. To assume that we cannot write down the entirety of like the process by which we create the biological
No, that's not to
structures.
say, just to be clear, I do think that you can write information down that helps you understand it a lot. Like, you can understand and have some idea of what it would be like for me to do those things.
Well,
That's absolutely the case. But
you
the
can
fact of the
describe
matter is,
experiences,
there's something that is
JonJon.
extremely left out there. I think that's Mary's room. That's exactly what it does, right?
No,
it shows you
it
that
doesn't.
when Mary steps outside the room and experiences colors for the first time, the whole thing is, did she gain something when she left the room? If you're a
No, she didn't. She didn't.
physicalist,
No, she didn't.
you have to remain. You have to
JonJon.
remain with the position.
No.
That's just
that
your
she's
belief,
gained nothing.
JonJon.
When she walked outside the room, she has gained
No.
nothing. And people like
No.
me are like, no, that's
She
not the case.
doesn't gain
When she
anything.
walked outside the room and she's seen colors for the first time, she
JonJon,
understands
if you
these things. She's gained something.
JonJon, if you experience a perfect simulation of color, you don't gain anything by walking outside.
She's actually colorblind in the scenario. And when she walks outside, she gets to see the colors for the first time. Actually, in other words,
No,
what
the
people
scenario
mean
she
by
was in a black and
consciousness
white
is
room, and when
experience
she
or
goes
human quality.
outside, she
Yeah, so when she sees colors for the first time, you guys can't say that she's gained anything, and that's absurd. She sees what the colors fucking look like for the first time.
She's already
sees-
seen that when she experienced a perfect simulation of the color.
when you say perfect simulation, you literally just mean you read a piece of paper.
No, I
Yes,
mean
that's
that we
what we mean
stimulated.
by
No,
physicalist and
no,
material. This thought
no,
equation, right?
no,
It's basically
no.
saying that if you write this information down on a piece of paper and she obtained this knowledge, that she would understand what colors are fully on because that's the whole claim here is that
No,
physicalism and materialism can't account for this qualia. In
no.
other words, you can't write down some fucking equation
If
that
you
shows
stimulate
me
her
what this new
brain,
color is on this other world.
John, if you stimulate her brain in the way that red would stimulate her brain, then she has experienced the quality of red despite having never seen a red thing.
That's false.
No, that's
That's
unequivocally
fucking
true.
ridiculous.
That is absolutely, like,
You're
definitionally
literally
the
that's
case.
begging. First off, that's begging the question, right?
Correct.
And it's a contradiction.
Just as the way you're describing it is begging the question.
So no, that's false. You can't. That's just absurd.
No,
I don't know why you would subscribe to
this
that.
is extremely true. We have, like, demonstrated this.
Yeah, John, what you're calling the hard problem is simply a category mistake.
No,
When
it's
we
simple. It's simple,
stimulate
right?
people's
If we have,
brains,
I can put it simpler to you guys, right? Let's say we have another life form, not even human, right? Let's say we have Martians and they evolve differently. They're aliens, literally. And they do this, right? They have their own mathematics and they write down all their information on a hard drive or whatever. And then they ship it to us and we read it or we just check it out on our computer, what this information they gave us. You guys are literally saying that once we have that information, we will know what it's like to feel their feelings. We know what it's like
no,
to do the things they
John.
do. That's
No,
exactly what you're saying,
No,
and that's
John.
exactly the
No,
intuition that I'm
that's
having.
no,
That you
no,
guys are just
no,
so
no,
absurd, dude.
no.
Like if I 360 flip
John,
down some
stop.
stairs right now, you can't
If
write
we
down some
stop.
fucking equation that shows
Stop.
you what it's like to what it feels like to jump down those stairs like
It's
that.
just fucking noise. Shut up, both of you.
If we alter our
So
minds
simple.
to be like the Martians' minds, then we would know what it's like to be a Martian.
All right, that's not part of the fucking Mary's room or anything. You're just saying that if we altered our minds to become the Martians, we could possibly feel like the Martians. That's just dumb shit.
If we had all the information about exactly how the neurology works, all the physical processes, and we simulated that within a human, then we would in fact have experienced what that Martian experienced.
So when you say experience that as a human, you're literally coming up with some crazy shit now. That what you have some supercomputer that's building some simulation. This is the Matrix theory, and your little explanation here, and this is just absurd.
I have
shit.
no idea what you're talking about.
It's fucking dumb.
It's extremely simple.
Yeah, you can't write down some shit that explains what it's like for me to 360 flip down some stairs.
Yeah, sure you can.
So
you're not going to know what it feels like to do that. I'm sorry, bud.
You can.
I can't write down some information for you.
Yes, you
put
can.
that information into someone's mind in order for them to experience it. Correct. And the way you would do that is you would stimulate the particular neurons that would allow them to experience this.
That's impossible.
It's not in the slightest. We do
this, and to the degree you can only do that to a very small degree, at the very least. Definitely not to the degree you would need to like be able to just fuck with somebody's brain and then them go be like a professional like skateboarder.
You can do this fully. So far, we've only been able to do this with with 120 neurons at a time, right? Not very many, considering we have literal millions and billion, like ridiculous number of neurons with a ridiculous number of connections. But we can allow blind people to see in a limited sense. We can create sensory perceptions in people that don't have the ability to like feel by virtue. And as our ability to stimulate more neurons more accurately increases, the ability to give people qualia that they otherwise don't have access to will increase.
Yeah, I think that's true. But it's just different from what my intuitions are. Like, I'm not saying that we can program new humans to feel things.
So I agree that having the knowledge about how a medium and how it's perceived by the eye and the brain. This is a different kind of knowledge than the actual material process involved in a particular instance of perceiving. But if you give someone knowledge of that perception, if you make them have that perception, then they've had that, and you can describe that perception with only material facts.
It just doesn't make sense. Like, for example, you can program all this shit into Mary's head, and you think, what, she's just going to close her eyes and be able to picture colors all of a sudden?
Yeah, exactly. If you give Mary's brain the exact stimulation that Mary would experience if she had functional eyes,
that's the problem. That's the problem, though. When you say give her the stimulation, we're not talking about the same thing anymore, man. You're talking about like some surgical procedure where you're like making her some cyborg type shit, not even human anymore at that point.
What?
Like, this is some kind of clone dummy
implants are not human? What the
this is what I'm saying. To the degree you're talking about here, you're talking about like
having a pacemaker makes you not. Getting brain electrodes makes you not human? What the fuck?
Well,
the most exclusionary, like bigoted shit I've heard in a long time.
Well, we were talking about like basically like cloning people.
No, we're not.
Like you can just the language. I'm basically saying the language you guys were using a second ago is that like you can become a professional skateboarder through this shit.
That I acknowledge because I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, I mean, just a second ago, you guys were. That's what I keep trying to explain to you. Like, not to the degree you're talking about. Like, you can't program people to be like understand qualia to the extent you guys do. Like, are claiming here. Like,
what does being a professional skateboarder have to do with qualia?
Well, I just think we're just talking past each other because like I'm not talking about inserting ideas into brains through surgery and shit. I'm talking about like if you could just if you had access to the information. Like if you could just read it and understand it, like if you wrote down an equation and like you got access to that equation, that's what I'm talking about. Like that's what people mean when they say, "Oh, well, physicalism isn't accounting for consciousness."
No, that's
or feelings in that sense. That's what we mean when we say something like you can't write down an equation that explains.
That has nothing to do with physicalism.
An explanation.
That's a straw man.
JonJon.
Well, I think physicalism explains that mathematical models explain these things, and they don't.
JonJon, an explanation is not.
Before, scientific materialism says something like, if it's not measurable, it's not real. So things like consciousness.
He just barrels on, talking and talking and talking.
If I have a set of instructions for how to build sensors that can perceive light, how to build electrodes that can deliver that sensory input into the brain, and how human senses.
I understand your intuition. I'm not interested in it anymore, man.
So
I get it.
He's just going to check out now.
If you have all the information, you can implant some shit into a brain. I get it.
So
that makes sense.
What this is saying is that physicalism is qualia. The only things that qualia are composed of are physical things. That's what physicalism is saying. We can reproduce all qualia through only physical things.
And the qualia is just an experience. Well, it's just a phenomenological experience, JonJon. It's completely different.
Well, that's the problem, right?
No, it's not. It's not a problem.
Is that it's just not explained. Yeah, it is.
An explanation.
Listen, it's not measurable, so it can't be considered real.
An explanation is not an experience.
You fuck.
JonJon, an explanation is not an experience.
Listen, consciousness.
It's a category error. It's a category error.
Consciousness can't be measured.
Yes, it can.
Therefore, it's not real.
The experience, the phenomenological experience of a thing, is not the same as the explanation of a thing. They're different categories.
Listen, Ace tried to explain it to you the other day about pluralism and all that good shit.
The Ace is an idiot. And besides, it's irrelevant. In this conversation, an explanation is a different category from an experience. Do you understand that? Yeah, he just checks out. You just check out.
You're just missing the intuition. This is what I just said a second ago.
There's no intuition. It's
like if you're
straightforward.
gonna be, when it comes to philosophy, right? Comes to philosophy and this idea of like scientific materialism as an ideology. Ace tried to explain to you that I was right when I said things like, if it's not, like these people make claims that these ideas are really influential, that if it's not measurable, it's not real. So things like consciousness, like they throw the baby out with the bathwater type shit. And it's absurd.
Consciousness is measurable.
We can explain consciousness quite easily. And the phenomenological experience,
Oh yeah, how
the
many
qualia,
consciousness do you have?
qualia of red is the experience of red.
For you to say we can explain consciousness quite easily, I just think of like Sam Harris fighting cultural relativism. The first thing that pops up in my mind, like it's extremely hard. You got like this war of ideas.
Completely
You've always got Sam
gibberish.
Harris
And we have to be, and we have to be able to make cases for like moral realism, like or like moral facts exist and things like that. So when you have ideas floating around that if it's not measurable, it's not real, or if it's not measurable, let's not take it very seriously.
That's a perversion of
you can't
science.
make some objective argument. It's dumb.
That's a perversion of science. Science doesn't say that if it's not measurable, it's not real.
Well, this is why I qualify it, I said, as an ideology. Like, if you're a scientific materialism as an ideology, like, if you're going to look at the world through some scientific materialist lens, there's a claim and conclusion there that's like, if it's not measurable, it shouldn't be taken seriously.
Yeah, that's a straw man. That's a straw man. That's not science. That's not what science says.
This is the type of thinking we're combating, whether you like it or not.
JonJon.
If I have a kind of matter that can't interact with any kind of matter, if it has no measurable existence, then how in the world does it exist?
Because, like I said earlier, I think consciousness would be like considered an inner dimension.
JonJon, could you answer what I just asked you?
Do you not understand what that would mean? Does that not make sense to you?
No,
that consciousness is an inner dimension.
Inner dimension is gibberish.
JonJon,
well, inner dimension might imply that it's measurable, right?
JonJon, if there's a kind of matter that interacts with no other matter, that has no mass, no energy, does nothing, does not affect our universe in the slightest, and that that matter be said to exist?
Why don't you listen to what I'm saying, man? Listen, if it's an inner dimension, wouldn't that imply that it's measurable in some sense?
Inner dimension is gibberish. It's gibberish, JonJon.
Inner dimensions would be measurable.
No, it's like a dualist claim, right?
This is something that
like a lot of people, when they acknowledge the heart problem, they become dualists because they want to be able to say that consciousness is real.
Scientists measure the possibility for collapsed dimensions, for additional spatial dimensions, for non-flat
all right. And there is this dimension of qualia or dimension of experience, right?
What?
I said there's this. So what's the fucking issue you're having with that claim? Listen, there is an inner dimension.
No, that's not what the word dimension means. That's not what the word dimension means.
Oh yeah, it's called conscious experience, bud.
Yeah, exactly. It's called conscious experience. Don't call it an inner dimension. That means something completely different.
Well, it doesn't mean anything at all.
Consciousness isn't real. You can't measure it.
Hey, JonJon, what's the color?
What do you mean?
JonJon, what's the color of triangle?
Red.
JonJon.
It's not blue? How do you know that? What's the color of triangle?
There's a difference in humans that are conscious, that are awake. The way that they react to stimuli, the way that they function is different than when they're unconscious. And we can induce consciousness and unconsciousness. These are all physical phenomena that can be measured.
Holy shit, Hoss. Listen, man.
Yeah, he's going to check out now.
It's really simple, bud.
It is, and I don't know why you're struggling so much with it.
I don't like Dan Dennett, that's why, because Dan Dennett sucks.
This isn't Dan Dennett.
Dan Dennett gay?
But,
Just check out like you always do, JonJon. Just check out. Just get high. That's going to be your life. Just check
Listen,
out.
I feel like the dialectic has changed, man. I don't agree with the way it's going. Like, for example,
Just check
I'm
out,
trying to
John.
explain it. It's going
Just check
away
out.
from what I'm intuiting here. Like,
Just check out, John.
Yes,
Just
but
check
you
out.
aren't-
like I
you
was
you aren't
literally
explaining
saying.
your
No, listen.
intuition.
Hold on. Listen, I was literally saying that if I write down an equation, or if I fucking, have all the information and I write it down and then you learn about it, or you could just read it, that you would be able to experience these feelings and shit.
John, that's a
based off
category
that
mistake.
alone.
John,
And then you
that's
guys
a category
went way
mistake,
further
John.
with it and
So,
invoked surgical
John.
No,
means
John.
and fucking like implementing ideas into brains and shit. I'm like,
Yeah,
what the fuck?
because
John,
John,
that's
what you're describing is not related to physicalism in the slightest.